Thank you, Amber. It's very good being here. Thank you for having me. I love being an auctioneer, and there's lots of reasons for this, but I love the company that I work for and the region that I look after, which starts out in the west from Te Atatu, Glendine, and moves upwards towards the northern part of our city and finishes up in Whangaparoa, Orewa and Millwater. So that's the area and the region that I look after. The first topic I want to discuss today is having a strategy buying at auction. When I think of strategy, the great tennis player Novak Djokovic comes to my mind. He trains, he sets goals, plans, he strategizes his moves before his tennis match. And I believe you can draw some comparisons buying a property at auction, believe it or not. So the key thing is to note that Novak wins a lot of his games, but he also loses some of them as well. So firstly, don't be discouraged if you miss out on buying a property for a few times before you actually win it, or even a lot of times. Stay positive as much as you can and try as hard as you can for as long as you can. So as auctioneer, I work with hard-working Barfoot Thompson agents that normally conduct 3 to 4 week marketing campaigns, and they work with buyers, helping them to get builders through so they can conduct builders reports, and they help buyers with knowledge on what's been selling in the area and so on and what's on the market. The agents also meet with our owners, giving feedback from buyers and discussing their expectations and dreams about the future and what they want to achieve. So nearer the end of the process, I get involved as the auctioneer and I help set the reserve price. And then right at the end, just before the big event comes, and that is auction day. So I jump up and I stand on a podium similar to this, and I'll ask for an opening bid. Who's going to start me away now with an opening bid, opening offer? Call it away. What about 500 to start me off? Well done with you at 500 now, closer to the front door than anyone else at 500 with you, through the middle, through the channel now, looking for another 10. And at that point, this is where strategy becomes so important. Now you might ask, it's pretty simple, isn't it? It's not that complicated. Well, I call about 20 to 40 auctions most weeks and see people leave with regret every week. And I see them, and often sometimes I get to talk to them as they walk out the door, and they wish that they had just bid once or twice more, and they regret missing out by $1,000 or $500 when they did have a little bit more gas in the tank. So in my opinion, I believe strategy is very important to increase your chances at auction. So when an auctioneer asks for an opening bid, when he asked for that opening $500,000 to start us off, well, throw your hand up, give it your best shot, and stay in as large bidding increments as you can for as long as you can. Obviously, know your limit. You'll have to know that. You don't want to get too carried away. That's why the good people at BNZ are here to help you. But I think a mistake we can make is to ask the auctioneer for lower increments, especially early on. Or if the auctioneer asks for that $500,000 to start us away, and then you say, hey, $300,000, and you try to cut the auctioneer down right at those early stages, knowing that the opening bid is always going to be quite a bit below the reserve price. So that, I believe, makes for a less successful strategy. Because one thing a lot of people do forget, I find, is that they forget that the owners are actually in the auction room. They're actually there looking, watching what the bidders are doing. And by bidding in good faith, you can make such a difference. You not only build rapport with the auctioneer, and I'll talk about this briefly shortly, but you also are showing the owners that you respect their property and in turn respect them. I remember a great story a little while ago where one of our agents was showing some buyers around properties so they could buy, and they made an appointment with some owners to show these people through. And so the agent met on the side of the street with this young couple that were trying to get into their first property, and they went down the driveway, they knocked on the door. The owners, it must have been an evening or something like that, the owners opened the door and welcomed them in. They briefly shook hands and said, thank you very much for letting us come through. And so the owners went off into the lounge or whatever, and then the buyers and the agent went through the house, looked at the 3 bedrooms and small little deck and enjoyed that, and then came back through and thanked the owners, and they walked out. A week later, they arrived at the auction room to bid on this specific property. And I was at the podium, like I am right now. I was at the podium and I asked for an opening bid. And I forget the exact number, so I'm just going to use the 500 that I've been using since I started. So I asked for an opening bid. Who's going to start me away at 500,000 now? I call it away, bid it away, offer it away at 500, and straight away their hands go up. At $500,000 and looking for another 10, go the boat and Barrett, need another 10, so 510 bid. And they came straight back at 520, and then the other bids kicked in at 530 again. And then the bidding stopped at 540 with these buyers that I was talking about. And at that point, we approached them and we just obviously said to them that the bidding is still below the reserve price, because it was at that point. And then we went back and forward between them and our owners, trying to get the property on the market. And the buyers, they increased their bid a little bit as well, because they knew the value of that area and they knew the market quite well. They'd been looking for a while, and so they were happy to increase. And then we went to the owners and we said, hey, look, we'll go back for that extra $5,000 to get that figure that you wanted, and we'll try to get it on the market. And I'll never forget this. These owners looked at us and they said, we don't want you to go back and get that extra $5,000. And we went, but we're always trained to go and get that extra $5,000, because obviously we're working for the vendor. And they said, no, we don't want you to do that, because we actually like them. We like them. And we met them briefly when they came through the open home last week, and they seemed nice. But today, we just see that they've been trying so hard. They bid straight away, and then when you asked for $10,000 again, they bid again, and then they've obviously increased a little bit as well. And we just want to say that we feel really respected, and we really feel like they've respected our property and like our property. And so we just want you to put it on the market right now. So we got them to just the reserve, and then I called it away at whatever figure, at 570 now, at 570, not a whisper, murmur, not a syllable or a sound, and I sold it to them. And there were hugs, and there were tears, and it was a great example of human kindness. But what it also showed me is that people buy people. And what I mean by that is that when there is goodwill between both buyer and seller, things can come together a lot more smoothly. So at Barfoot Thompson, we do not practice what is commonly called the vendor bid. So if bidding stops below our vendor's instructions to sell, more often than not, we will approach the highest bidder, engage in some dialogue between them and our owners, all in the endeavour to get the property on the market. So this creates total transparency for you as the buyer. So we will discuss increasing your bid when that happens, and I find that 99.9999% of buyers are very knowledgeable within a certain area. So very knowledgeable in close proximity of the property that they're buying. Now, real estate agents might have a much wider general knowledge, but a lot about that specific area. And you've been going through open homes and talking with agents on what's sold and what hasn't and what's on the market. So 2 responses from buyers when we do approach them in the auction room when the bidding does stop below the reserve is first to get an increase, which is great, and if we can do that, similar to that scenario that I just talked to you about in that story of that young couple buying. You obviously, to do that, you're trying to get it on the market before it gets passed in and we open it up to other possible conditional interest. The other responses I get is a folding of the arms, and they say, no, that's it, definitely not. That's the market, is what some people say to me. That's the market, there's nobody else here for it, and so we're not increasing our bid. So when we tell the owner that, they obviously say no, and it becomes harder to create goodwill. Remember, people buy people. When there's goodwill between both buyer and seller, things can come together more smoothly. So one last tip on bidding is not to bid late. So that's what I'm talking about, building rapport with the auctioneer. Build that rapport, bid early, bid strong. If you leave it until it's on the market and I don't see you and I call it away 3 times and it's going, sold, and then your goes up, then there is nothing I can do about it. We obviously can't reopen the bidding. So when you walk into the auction room next time or walk into an on-site auction, I want you all to say to yourself, I am the Novak Djokovic of the auction space. Now, don't say that loudly or out loud because people will think you're really weird. But just remember what I mean by that. Strategise, plan. Sometimes you might miss out, but keep your chin up and stay positive. Changing tact, at the beginning I mentioned the region that I look after. There are 5 of us Barfoot and Thompson auctioneers that look after North, South, East, West and Central Auckland. And from what I've noticed in my area and talking to my colleagues, affordability can be obtained in some pockets and area throughout Auckland, such as Gulf Harbour is just one example, an area that I look after obviously, where you're about 50-minute ferry ride to and fro from the city, where one of my colleagues that works at our Shortland Street head office showed me pictures or video of dolphins swimming alongside the ferry as they were coming into Gulf Harbour one evening. So soon you could be saying to yourself with a glass of wine on a Friday night travelling back home that easy travelling is most certainly mine. That's what you could be saying to yourself possibly. But that's just one example, obviously. So just what we're saying is to start in the property market sometimes requires an adjustment of suburb to create great opportunities for you. Look, thank you very much for letting me speak tonight. I know it's been a little bit outside the box and not quite the same as the other speakers. I hope it's been of assistance to you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the auction room.